The planet Zinthar was renowned for its disciplined society and cautious approach to nature. Zintharians were a highly logical species, known for their meticulous research and structured thinking. Their technological advancements allowed them to explore distant planets, and their curiosity led them to one world that had long fascinated them: Earth. This small blue and green orb had drawn attention from scientists across the galaxy for its incredible diversity of life forms, ecosystems, and the particularly unique beings who called themselves humans. It was this curiosity that brought an esteemed team of Zintharian researchers to Earth's surface, with the intent of studying humanity's relationship with its most dangerous creatures. Upon arrival, the researchers, cloaked in advanced camouflage suits, chose a dense forest area to establish their observation point. Earth was teeming with life, far more diverse than Zinthar's mostly desert-like ecosystems. The vibrant colors of Earth's landscape, the calls of exotic birds, and the earthy scent of nature struck the team as overwhelming. This was an environment entirely different from anything they had known: lush, unpredictable, and in many ways, frightening. Their objective was clear: they wanted to understand how humans interacted with the powerful apex predators of their world. On Zinthar, predators were universally avoided, and most wildlife was strictly controlled. The notion of a species willingly coexisting with dangerous creatures was considered almost ludicrous. Yet, Earth's inhabitants not only lived alongside these creatures, but many even sought to understand and tame them. The Zintharians found this behavior utterly baffling. Their first observation mission took them deep into a forest reserve in North America. They were specifically targeting an area known for its bear population. The thought of observing humans interacting with these enormous animals both excited and worried the researchers. They had studied these bears extensively from recorded human footage and data collection prior to their journey. The information showed them a massive predator capable of tearing through flesh with a single swipe of its paw. They couldn't understand why any rational species would attempt to live near such a beast. They settled on a high ridge overlooking a river that snaked through the forest, a place known for frequent bear sightings. It was early morning, and mist hung over the water, creating an eerie yet serene scene. The researchers began their vigil, their highly sensitive recording devices picking up every sound, from the rustling leaves to the distant calls of birds. Hours passed, and the researchers waited, adjusting their sensors and occasionally making small notes. Just as their patience was beginning to wane, movement near the river's edge caught their attention. Their ocular sensors zoomed in, capturing a massive brown bear lumbering toward the river. Its immense size and power were apparent even from a distance, and the Zintharians marveled at the creature's imposing presence. It seemed almost otherworldly, an embodiment of raw strength, its shaggy fur rippling as it moved. The bear reached the water's edge and began to drink, seemingly oblivious to its surroundings. The researchers watched in awe as the animal scooped up fish with its powerful claws, effortlessly flipping them into its mouth. They whispered to each other in their native tongue, comparing notes on its behavior. Suddenly, another movement drew their focus. Something, or rather someone, was approaching. Emerging from the line of trees was a human. A lone figure, moving with purpose yet without any visible weapons or protective gear. The Zintharians were stunned. This human appeared to be utterly defenseless, yet they were approaching the river, seemingly unaware of or uninterested in the massive predator that was feeding just meters away. The tension in the observation post was palpable. The researchers were certain they were about to witness a tragic incident, a fatal encounter between an unwitting human and an apex predator. One of the team members quickly adjusted the recording parameters, ensuring they captured every second in high resolution, while another began drafting a report titled Fatal Human-Predator Interaction Case Study. But what happened next was entirely unexpected. The humans slowed as they approached the bear, raising one arm in what seemed like a casual wave. The Zintharians watched, their alien eyes widening in disbelief, as the bear paused in its meal and turned its head towards the human. There was a brief moment when the entire scene seemed to hang in a delicate balance. Then, the bear, this massive creature that embodied nature's fury, dropped the fish it was holding and sat back on its haunches, as though it had been trained. The human continued to approach, speaking softly in a language that the researchers' translators identified as English. They couldn't quite catch the words, but the tone was calm, almost affectionate. The bear made a low grunting sound, almost like a reply, and the human reached out, giving it a gentle scratch behind the ears, just as one might do with a pet. The researchers were in shock. Their data suggested that such behavior should lead to aggression, or at the very least a defensive reaction. Yet here was this human, casually interacting with the bear, as if it were nothing more than a domesticated creature. The Xantharians' logical minds struggled to process the scene. The lead researcher, Varix, was particularly puzzled. He replayed what they had witnessed on his portable device, analyzing each movement, each gesture, and trying to detect any sign of coercion or chemical influence. But there was nothing. The human showed no fear, and the bear showed no aggression. It was a relationship built on something entirely foreign to Xantharians' trust and perhaps even mutual respect. For the next several minutes, the human continued their interaction, speaking softly while the bear responded in its own way, grunts and occasional nudges. Eventually, the human gave the bear one last affectionate pat before turning and walking away, back into the forest. The bear, seemingly content, returned to fishing, its massive paw dipping into the river once more. It was as though nothing unusual had occurred, as if this interaction was simply a part of their routine. The Xantharians were left in stunned silence. Varix turned to his team, who were equally bewildered. How could this be explained? On their home planet, any encounter with a predator of this size would result in immediate conflict. The concept of taming was not unknown to them. They had domesticated several smaller, harmless species, but the idea of forming a bond with a deadly predator was beyond their comprehension. After a lengthy discussion, the team concluded that they needed more data. Perhaps this human was an anomaly, a rare individual with unique skills. They decided to follow this human, to observe them further, and see if there was a broader cultural phenomenon at play. As they packed up their equipment and activated their cloaking devices, Varix felt a mix of emotions: curiosity, disbelief, and a touch of something else. Was it admiration? There was something undeniably compelling about the way humans interacted with the world around them. It wasn't based purely on logic or fear, but on something deeper, something almost courageous. As the sun began to set, the Xantharians moved silently through the forest, their sensors tracking the human who had just challenged everything they thought they knew about predator behavior. This was only the beginning, Varix realized. Earth held secrets far beyond what they had imagined, and it seemed that humans, with all their complexities and contradictions, were at the center of those mysteries. The Xantharians knew one thing for certain: this mission was going to be far more interesting than they had initially thought. The Xantharian team spent the next several days shadowing the human they had observed interacting with the bear. Using their advanced cloaking technology, they followed the human into small towns, through dense forests, and even into their home, a cozy cabin located in the heart of the woods. The human, who they soon learned was named Sam, seemed completely unaware of their extraterrestrial observers. The researchers quickly discovered that Sam was not an ordinary person. He was a wildlife behaviorist and animal trainer, dedicating his life to understanding and coexisting with Earth's wildlife. Varix and his team recorded every moment, capturing interactions between Sam and both wild and domestic animals. They were particularly interested in how he trained them and what methods he used to tame animals that, by Xantharian standards, should have been uncontrollable. Every morning, Sam would begin his day with a walk through the forest, often accompanied by a few animals: a domesticated wolf named Luna, a red-tailed hawk, and, sometimes, even the bear they had seen earlier by the river. Sam's routine involved feeding the animals, speaking to them in a soft, calming voice, and making subtle gestures that conveyed his intentions. Varix was fascinated by the intricate dynamics at play. noting that Sam appeared to communicate without words as much as he did with them. The animals seemed to understand him, responding not only to commands but also to subtle shifts in his tone and body language. One morning, Varix and the team watched as Sam prepared a training session. He laid out some simple objects: a few wooden beams, a set of rings, and a long rope, turning an open clearing into a makeshift training ground. Shortly thereafter, the bear, whom Sam called Bruno, arrived at the clearing. Despite Bruno's imposing size, he seemed relaxed in Sam's presence. The Xantharians were puzzled. They couldn't understand how a human, without the use of force or control devices, could establish such a rapport with a predator. Sam began by walking around the clearing, using hand gestures to guide Bruno. He spoke in a gentle, rhythmic tone, praising the bear whenever it successfully followed his instructions. Bruno seemed to respond not out of fear, but out of a desire to please Sam, a notion that was completely foreign to the Xantharians. Control was maintained through intimidation, and containment animals were not seen as beings to communicate or build trust with. Varix focused his recording device on Sam's face, observing his expressions. There was no hint of coercion or superiority, just patience and genuine respect for the creature he was working with. He spoke to Bruno as if they were partners, equals working towards a common goal. The researchers listened in awe as Sam explained his philosophy to another human who had joined him that morning, an older woman named Karen. Sam explained that the key to working with animals was trust. He emphasized that animals, like humans, responded to kindness and consistency. He spoke of a bond built not on fear but on understanding and empathy, and how he had spent months, even years, gaining Bruno's trust. It wasn't about domination but rather cooperation, something that allowed both human and animal to thrive. He mentioned the importance of body language, of respecting an animal's space, and of understanding their needs. But the bear had learned that Sam was not a threat, and in turn, Sam had learned to respect the boundaries that Bruno set. The Xantharians were stunned. The idea of empathy as a basis for controlling such a dangerous creature seemed almost naive to them, yet the evidence was undeniable. They watched as Bruno followed Sam's cues, standing on his hind legs, balancing on a wooden beam, and even retrieving a small ring that Sam tossed into the clearing. Every time Bruno succeeded, Sam praised him and offered a treat. The bear's eyes lit up with what the researchers could only describe as joy, a pure, simple joy that radiated from the massive creature. Later that day, as Sam and Karen sat near the cabin, sipping a hot drink, Karen asked how Sam had managed to tame Bruno. Sam's response gave the Xantharians even more insight into the human mindset. He spoke about his early days, about how he had found Bruno as a cub, injured and alone after his mother had been killed by poachers. Sam had taken him in, nursing him back to health, never intending to tame him but simply wanting to help. Over time, as Bruno grew, the bond between them strengthened. Sam had never forced Bruno to stay, and Bruno, in turn, had never tried to leave. To the Xantharians, this was perhaps the most incomprehensible part of the story. On Xanthar, the relationship between species was defined by utility and control. They took what they needed from the natural world and ensured that the creatures they deemed useful were kept under strict supervision. The idea that a predator could choose to stay with a human out of loyalty, without coercion, was baffling. They struggled to understand why an animal like Bruno, who could easily overpower a human, would willingly remain in Sam's presence. The researchers' interest grew even more profound when they observed Sam interacting with other wild animals. One afternoon, they watched as he approached a den of foxes, each of which had cubs that yipped and played near the entrance. Sam moved slowly, speaking softly, his hands held low in a gesture of peace. The mother fox, wary but not fearful, allowed him to come closer, and Sam eventually sat just a few feet from the den, quietly observing without intruding. Over the next few days, the researchers gathered data that painted a picture of a human who seemed to have an almost magical connection to the creatures of his world. Orcs and the team knew, of course, that there was no magic involved. It was all based on something much deeper, something rooted in emotional intelligence and empathy. The humans had evolved in a way that allowed them to coexist with nature, not by overpowering it, but by understanding it. It was this approach that had led Sam to forge bonds with creatures that other species, even the highly advanced Xantharians, could not begin to fathom. Determined to understand the broader cultural significance of what they were witnessing, the researchers began to expand their study beyond just Sam. They tapped into local databases, accessing information about wildlife rehabilitation centers, animal sanctuaries, and even cultural traditions that involved living harmoniously with nature. What they discovered astounded them. Sam was not an anomaly. There were thousands, perhaps millions, of humans who shared his mindset, who worked tirelessly to protect and coexist with Earth's wildlife. The researchers learned of people who dedicated their lives to saving endangered species, who rehabilitated injured animals and released them back into the wild. They found stories of humans risking their lives to stop poachers, of people traveling to remote parts of the world to study and protect fragile ecosystems. It became clear that there was a deep, almost spiritual connection between many humans and the natural world. Varric spent long hours reviewing this new information, trying to reconcile it with everything he knew about predator-prey dynamics. On Xanthar, they had always seen their environment as something to be controlled, tamed, and exploited for resources. The idea that a species could thrive by forging a cooperative relationship with dangerous predators was a radical concept, one that challenged the very foundations of Xantharian understanding of nature. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, the Xantharians witnessed yet another remarkable interaction. Sam had gone to the river once more, this time with Karen by his side. As they sat on the riverbank, Sam spoke to Karen about the importance of respecting the boundaries of the creatures they shared their world with. He spoke of balance, how humans, as part of the ecosystem, had a responsibility to care for and protect the animals around them. As if to prove his point, Bruno emerged from the trees, lumbering towards them before settling down beside Sam, his head resting gently on Sam's knee. Karen reached out hesitantly, her hand hovering over Bruno's fur before finally making contact. The bear let out a soft, contented huff, his eyes closing as he relaxed beside the two humans. To Varric, this scene was the epitome of everything they had learned over the past several days. There was no fear, no struggle for dominance, only trust, respect, and a bond that transcended species. It was a form of coexistence that seemed almost utopian, a glimpse into a way of life that was entirely different from what they knew. Back in their cloaked observation post, Varric addressed his team. They had gathered an overwhelming amount of data, and it was clear that their initial understanding of Earth and its inhabitants had been fundamentally flawed. There was a strength in humanity that went beyond their technology or their adaptability. It was a strength rooted in compassion, in their willingness to understand and connect with the world around them. It was this capacity for empathy that allowed humans like Sam to not only survive alongside deadly predators but to thrive with them, creating bonds that seemed almost supernatural in their depth. As the Xantharians began preparing to depart Earth, Varric knew that their report would challenge many of the core beliefs held by their society. He imagined the reaction of the Xantharian Council when they learned that there was an intelligent species that not only coexisted with its predators but did so out of choice, not compulsion. The implications were vast, suggesting that perhaps there was a different way to interact with the natural world, one based not on fear and control but on understanding and respect. Varric allowed himself a moment of reflection as he watched Sam and Bruno, now joined by Luna the wolf, sitting peacefully by the river. Perhaps, he thought, there was something to be learned from these humans. They were not without their flaws. Certainly they could be destructive, impulsive, and at times even cruel. But there was also something undeniably beautiful about their ability to love and protect, even when faced with the raw power of nature. As they activated the cloaking field and prepared to depart, Varix made a note in his final report: Earth was a world of contrasts, and its people were a testament to the power of empathy. They had seen firsthand how a simple human, with no advanced technology or weaponry, could form a bond with one of nature's most dangerous creatures, not through domination but through patience and love. And as the Xantharian ship lifted silently into the night sky, Varix couldn't help but feel a sense of hope. Perhaps someday, his own people could learn to see their world not as something to be controlled, but as something to be cherished and protected. And perhaps in that shift they would find a new strength, one that, like the humans, came from understanding, compassion, and an unwavering respect for life in all its forms.